Good afternoon. Great to be here. I'm here with Robert Asencio, who is put his hat into the ring on a congressional race.
Yes.
It's district, a newly drawn District 28 against Carlos Jimenez.
That is correct. It's actually the old 26, right? The only addition now, a little shaving on the east side, but the only difference is that they've added the city of Sweetwater.
And Carlos Jimenez is a one-term incumbent up for re-election. You just came out victorious from your primary.
That is correct.
And the election is November, whatever the first Tuesday of November is. So you're in the middle of it. How's it going for you?
Oh, it's like drinking water at a water hydrant with the stream increasing
fire
by
hydrant.
volume. Yeah. But, importantly, it's going well, right? And how do I gauge that by? By the amount of reception that the people are having towards me as an alternate candidate, right? As a choice, as a different choice. If you look at the dollars, yes, the dollars, they haven't come in. It's a grind, but every day we're raising more and more money, and every day there are more and more people that come into this race in support. Now, I mentioned the money part because we are in the most expensive media market in probably the country, one of the most expensive media markets in the country. And what we raise money for is to be able to communicate the message, right? Because if voters don't hear you, they don't know you're out there. And what we've seen is a lot of horrible elected people get elected to office who apparently raise a lot of money, and they message whatever, the points that appeal most to people, and that's all people hear. And then these people get elected. And in the case of Carlos Jimenez, which I am a constituent, I live in the district, I'm not happy with his service.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because it's interesting. To me, we need good candidates. It's a lot of work. And whenever you talk to people, whenever I talk to candidates, their least favorite part is raising the money.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary evil to get the message out, which is the part that, as you talk about it, you enjoy is getting out and talking with your constituents. It's an interesting district. Carlos won, beat a Democrat, Marcarcel Powell, and it's a competitive district.
Very.
And it was interesting because I think that Carlos got into office because Carlos Jimenez got into office because he was the mayor, and people saw he ran on his record as the mayor, frankly. I think he definitely did some dog whistles to the Republicans, hardcore Republicans, Trump supporters, and was able to ride that into office. And now we have a body of work in Congress.
That's true.
That he's going to have to run on. So let's talk a little bit about what has Carlos Jimenez, the congressman, done for 2 years.
Okay. So one of the first acts he takes in Congress was on January 6th, the voting against certifying the election of 2020, the presidential election. Oh, look, he says that he voted against certification because he was voting against Pennsylvania, the votes in Pennsylvania and Arizona. Now, yet, to date, there's been no proof whatsoever to show that there was any legal action with the votes of either state. But let's say there was. What did he do to introduce or to correct that problem, right? So he votes against the certification of the two states, but he doesn't introduce a resolution or remedy because there is none. He bought into the big lie, okay? And I'm going to stop here, and I like to be nonpartisan about this. As a fellow American, one of the greatest powers that we have, one of the greatest rights that we have is our right to vote. Think about it. It protects all the other rights that we have because you vote, and that vote gives you say over what is done or the political actions, right? And to have a member of Congress, and he was one of 147, vote against certifying the votes, the election, he's voting against the American people. And that is a seditionist.
So I want to talk about that because it's interesting. We're going to get into your background a little bit. I mean, you
Sure.
were a Republican for a long time.
Pretty much my whole life up until 2010, I think it was 2011.
And I think that there's a lot of people who had to switch as the parties are, it's a moving target,
That is
right?
correct.
And probably Republican Party got more conservative. So there's some people that, left both ways. And it reminds, when listening to you talk reminds me of the attorney J.C. Planas. And J.C. Planas said something to me that was very provocative and thought-provoking, was he said, if a Florida barred attorney did something to try to invalidate his vote, try to decertify his vote, he would
Get sanctioned.
Well, no, he what J.C. Planas was saying, who was a Republican who's now a Democrat, was like, I would go after that guy's law license. Like it was really the
emotion,
the emotion and the aggressiveness of like, don't mess with my vote, right? That is where we're at. And it's interesting that I think there's passion on both sides, but it reminded me of I was involved in peripherally involved in a murder trial. And we're going to talk about your background as a police officer, but it was a murder trial. I was highly emotional, and somebody was convicted. And the defense attorney said something that made me think about elections. And he said, jury's always right. We're appealing on a bunch of different grounds, but the jury's decision is right. And basically what he was saying was like, we're not going to attack our jury system. The jury system is what it is. And we have other grounds to attack this, but you don't hear lawyers saying like the jury's crooked or the jury system doesn't work. And when you throw the election in, it was a very, we're in America, we're allowed to talk freely. But when you say an election is illegitimate, to me, that's a very serious charge. And then it's like, okay, where's the evidence? And I think that we can all agree there has not been any production of evidence. So then what are the consequences of that, right? What are the consequences for throwing into question the legitimacy of really the underpinning of our society? And I think that it'll be interesting to see if there's a reckoning on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the problems is that there's still a huge swath of our voters who still are unsure about that.
Sure. So let's face it. The fact that, look, Congress is it's the body of government, right? We had 3 co-equal branches of government. It is at the federal level, one of the highest branches of government that creates the laws of this great country. And if we have members of Congress disparaging the votes, that, by the way, also resulted in Carlos Jimenez getting elected, right? And now we're going up for re-election, or he's going up for re-election. That will be, his re-election will hinge on the people's votes. So what does he tell the voters? He doesn't believe in their vote, right? But he'll say it's Arizona, Pennsylvania. That's the rhetoric. I think what people need to understand is that they're being led down the road of mis and disinformation. And that has clouded the political spectrum. In a country that's so great. I mean, I served this country as a police officer, a vet, and military, in the Florida House, as a taxpayer. I believe in our country. I don't want to leave our country.
And I want to interrupt you on that important note, because it's an interesting. I find you a very interesting candidate, because Carlos Jimenez cannot paint you as a lot of these racists, particularly in South Florida, as a socialist, as a communist. Your background is you were in the Army for how many years?
6 years in Army Reserves,
6 years
during the Cold War.
You leave there, you become a police officer. I mean, when I think of you, I know you in this society.
Mm-hmm.
I know you in our in our community. I think of you as a police officer. Like that's what it's interesting. I wonder if
Never
voters
shed
see
the
that.
title.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I just just a lot of your work has been in policing and supporting police officers, and I think
serving
of
the community.
I think of you that way, right? And so it's interesting to see you running. No one's going to question your law and order No one's going to question, you know, and so it brings us to this idea of like, you know, for you to throw your hat in the ring on this, on getting back to what Carlos has done for the district and what you're seeing in your district. There's a lot of needs in your district. So let's talk more about what has Carlos done to address the needs within your district.
So I'd like to take it one step farther. So I'm gonna answer your question, but I'd like to tell you what I'm going to do, because I think the people that are going to watch this and the people that are going to vote for me deserve that much, right? Enough with the complaining. Let's give them a little taste of what has already been done, what's already occurred, and why I'm running. Again, Carlos is everything the administration puts forth, he says no to. He voted against the American Rescue Plan. So we've gone through a period of history that we have not seen in our lifetimes of immense hurt, the pandemic. And whether we believe in COVID or not, it resulted in almost a worldwide recession. The country's not immune from the impacts, economic impacts of other economies, other countries, and it affects, and then us. But also, historically, people in South Florida have been underpaid and underemployed. There's a need for added industry, good quality paying industries. But let's go back to Carlos. So Carlos votes against the American Rescue Plan. And in that plan, there was money for shots in the arm for those people that wanted them, better protection. There was money to stimulate the economy. Because if the economy had not been stimulated, don't take my word for it, research it. Economists say this. If the economy had not been stimulated, we had not had the dollars that we put in, that we pay our taxes, right? Our taxes go to the federal government. If that money had not been used to keep the economy afloat, this economy would have taken a tank, and we'd probably be in a depression as opposed to a recession. So he voted against that. He voted against money that came back for jobs, bridges, and infrastructure. Our district extends all the way to Key West. Monroe County is a county of island chains connected by bridges. A lot of those bridges are older. The roadway needs help, added resurfacing. The bridges need work. It's a constant effort, especially with an area that we have, which we're in the Hurricane Alley, right? We're getting continuously bombarded by storms, effects of storms. We're getting continually bombarded by the climatic changes of climate change. We're getting bombarded by sea level rise, undeniable. As a matter of fact, Key West, the Lower Keys, in the country are ranked amongst the top 4 most vulnerable spots in the country. He votes against those dollars. Well, guess what? We're looking at the Monroe County. Their economy is based on the tourism. It's paradise. But what's going to happen when the coral reef, which is being, decaying because increased temperatures, the runoff from the lake, right, comes through the Everglades into the bay, into the water. What's going to happen if we don't address those needs? So while he's saying no to these plans that are providing dollars for jobs to help people limit their pain, put them to work, keep them alive, what's he proposing to help? He has not. I plan the first bill I plan to introduce in Congress, and you guys get me elected, first plan, my promise, is a workforce business development and economic growth plan. We plan to capitalize on apprenticeship programs, but we know apprentices as certifications. No, we're going to take it from certifications all the way to PhD level. We're going to bring academia, schools, training schools, and colleges and universities to the table. We're going to marry them with industry. We did it while I was in the Florida House, and the project was killed by the leadership. Why? Because it was partisan. But yet, the most amount of lobbyists to ever sign up for a bill in that cycle was to our bill, because what it does, it allows the workforce to be retrained in emerging industries where people can earn more money. Now, David, I'm going to ask you a question. Before we go there, people can earn more money. They can have career jobs that are going to pay them more, and they're going to address the issue of underpay and underemployment. I'm going to ask you a question. You're an attorney, and from what I remember, you represent a lot of people that are going to be shafted over on their house, rent and mortgages. Do we have a problem with housing?
Yeah, we do.
We're one of the largest one of the most expensive housing markets in the country.
Yep.
Yet we know the pay. So why aren't we addressing these issues that we can provide government incentives, which dollars are already there? We passed, they passed, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act. Say what you can about it, but there's dollars there for emerging industries to reduce the footprint, carbon footprint, but also help farmers, help industries grow, help the keys, reduce, mitigate their or manage their vulnerabilities, right? Dade County, we need a lot of help. So the congressman that we have is not introducing any that addresses the people's needs.
It's interesting you say it, because I think whenever I work with a swath of, I think it's pretty representative of South Florida, right? It's small businesses. I mean, some of these small businesses are worth tens of millions of dollars, but they're small businesses. They're people who had a dream, worked hard, achieved these goals. And I'm very sensitive to what are we doing to help those people? Like, the Mayor Suarez of the city of Miami got a lot of flack for getting after people who basically his solution to the affordability crisis was get a better job. And it was seen, I think correctly, as very callous and a very short, like I don't know, like an accusatory way to look at the problem. And it was interesting, but on the other hand, there was a little bit of truth to it. And I don't think it's get a better job. It's okay. I mean, I think the response to that is, what are you doing to get people to allow business to grow, to allow, people to expand their business, employ more people, and do things? And it's interesting because we're so unique in the number, we were talking earlier off the air about like the Miami hustle. And I think that's what makes us special, right? Everyone opens up a restaurant. Everyone opens up a side business. We've been doing that before. Kind of now it's the trend. Miami usually leads the trend. That's the trend. And I think that's one of the things I look at is in your district, there is a need for infrastructure, training, things like that. And how do you get that message out where this is not, you're not proposing big government. You're not basically the thing we talk about. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. It's an opportunity to get you started. How do you communicate that in an effective way to get people to understand where you're coming from?
Well, part of it is shows like this, but the other part is, for when people don't see me on the air, I have to raise money to be able to message, right? And like I said, we're back in one of the most expensive media markets. And so we have to pay for that comms, but we also need people like yourself to spread the information that there's a choice here. I don't know about you, man, but I'm tired of self-serving politicians that only care about themselves. Because you mentioned something just a minute ago. The message of feeling like it's callous. Like, I think a lot of the people that would vote otherwise are feeling they're checked out because they feel it doesn't make a difference. Politicians are dirty. They don't care about me. I'm just one person. Well, they need to know that there are people that will fight for them, and I'm one of them because I come from that. I know what it is to live in a car. I know what it is to be dead ass broke, but I also know what it is to do well. And yeah, it was up to me to pull my bootstraps up, bust my ass, and do what I had to do to make ends meet. But I also was very lucky because there are people who they just don't have the brakes. But I think that, like this whole student loan cancellation, student debt, I paid my student debt, right? The loans. But given the structure, and this is what Carlos will not talk about, right? He won't talk about the fact that the loan providers for student loans are predators. They jack up the interest rates, and it's a debt that often is too expensive, and college and the price of education continues to go up. And that's part of our program with this bill that I plan to introduce. It'll allow students to be able to go to school. And the state of Florida has a statute. Let me be clear. The state of Florida has a statute in the books that allows for fee waivers, allows students to go to school for free. And it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. The problem is there's no revenue stream. But if we marry industry with students, with the schools, FIU, Miami-Dade, Keys College, right? Monroe, the schools in Monroe, and others that will come online, we can get a better trained workforce, an evolving workforce, that people are going to be able to earn more. And if we earn more, we spend more on our economy. And therefore, our economy will continue to grow. So, there's a lot that we've been just sold. South Dade. Why is it that people have to travel from South Dade to North Dade for a job? And why is it our transportation sucks? Ask Carlos. He tried to privatize a lot of it.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm very sensitive about that. I'm very, pro-capitalist, and I get, I remember getting mad one time when President Obama said, "Government makes business possible." I didn't like how he put it. And then on the other hand, when I look at South Dade, I think about that's government failing business, right? If you live in South Dade, you have to travel in a car to work, right? There's a bunch of policy decisions that resulted in that looking like that, where there is this idea of like, if there was public transportation that allowed people to move around our county. And it's interesting for me as a lawyer, I got to tell you something, like there's just cases I won't take. I can't get up to Broward County during rush hour. It's just not worth it. I can't sit for 2 hours.
Parking lot.
And it starts affecting business. That's the point. It starts affecting business. It starts affecting the bottom line of people who are, you just can't, you have to, we're almost becoming more tribal in certain areas because of that, because you just can't get up, and now we have the Bright Line, which I think is a great, public-private partnership, which is, a good thing. I want to change, this is not a change what we're talking about, but it kind of is like I think a symptom of what's happening. I want to talk about what's happening in DC. And I think it's a microcosm of what's happening in the country, where I've talked to politicians before about how working together is now become a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, one of the things that I've seen is a lot of times someone will run on a very liberal agenda, get elected, and this happens a lot in local government, and get elected and very quickly learn that they will accomplish nothing if they won't work with others.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like if you just get up there and say no development, well, all those things that you care about that you got elected to do, like if you want more parks, well, guess what? Everyone's going to vote against you because you won't horse trade with anybody. You won't work with anybody. And so I see a lot of activists, community activists, get frustrated with those politicians because they see them working with the other side. And I that doesn't seem to apply too much to the Republicans. The Republicans are voting in these very conservative people. And to use kind of like maybe an older phrase in politics, like they're not bringing home the bacon, right? They're not. Their Republican elected officials are not bringing home the bacon, but they don't hold them accountable. They don't say like kind of where you're going, like not to turn it all. It's to talk about what Carlos Jimenez has done for that district. It's if you I think it's a fair question to ask, right? Because I think that
people need to know.
It's what has he really brought home, and I wonder if the Republican, I wonder at what point Republican voters in that district will look and say, you know what, maybe I ideologically I agree with some of this stuff. I do believe the election was fake or whatever their thing is, but I can't afford my rent.
Yeah, my
kids can't find a job. We're not. I'm worse off than I was 10 years ago. Like, at what point does that? I think that there's gonna be a reckoning in South Florida at some point, and I think your election is a real indicator of that, because again, you have the only Nixon could go to China thing. Like no one can accuse you of being a socialist. No one can accuse you of not being from down here. No one can accuse you of not having roots in the community. No one can accuse you of not, having your finger on the pulse. So what are the challenges for you, like, are to get elected? I guess you do have to cross over to some Republican voters.
Absolutely, and that's not the issue. I think we're Americans, right? And people want to know. Look, I'm a patriot. I lay down my life, and I already proved it for this country. Okay, I put my life in jeopardy many times, and I'll do it again because it's our country. Look at my lapel. The pin there is 9/11. This was given to me by members of the NYPD, and I was in the Florida House, and I took off the Florida House pin. Not that I don't respect it, because I think it's a phenomenal trust of the public, public will to vote me in, and me wear it. But this pin represents an attack on our country, and the fact that our country came together in the wake of that attack and the unity we saw, we still need to. Because there's a lot of 911 moments, and this is a 911 moment. Because I'll tell you what, those people who are like pushing the points or the buttons of those fellow Americans who see things in a different way than I do, they should not be stoking the flames to get them to believe that it's us against them.
No.
And what you were talking about, the question you were asking about, if I go to Washington, it's about working across the aisle, no matter who the administration is. And one of the things that they're going to accuse me of, one of the things Carlos already talking about, is that I'm a Biden diehard. I'm a Biden lover, and I'm a Pelosi lover. It's not about that, man. It's about voting for the issues that bring results to the district that I serve. And then secondly, to our fellow Americans across the country. Too many people are suffering for us to stand on the sidelines and to say no and not try to fight. I was in the minority, like Carlos is in Congress. I know what it is to work across the aisle and hand bills off to the other side so they can pass them.
Yeah.
If it's good, who gives a flip, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure we take care of the people's needs. Capping cost of insulin, right? He voted against that. Lowering, suspending the taxes on gasoline. He voted against that. Putting money in our pockets, not our pockets as in handouts, but helping people get out of a hole. He voted against that. Voting against women's rights. So he'd rather a woman, okay, think about this, a woman who has been the victim of rape or incest, he'd rather she carry the child to term, and beyond that, is that not a sentence? I don't want to plagiarize Valdemi's last commercial, but she did a pretty good job in the last commercial where she says, rape and incest are crimes. Abortion is not. Now, we force women to carry their babies. What are we telling the doctors? They swear to the Hippocratic Oath. What about if a woman needs health care? And in the state of Florida, we can't, there's going to be an 15-week abortion ban, or even an outright abortion ban, which is what is being rumored. Now we're going to criminalize her for going out of the state to seek medical care. If her child, if the baby or the fetus inside I wouldn't say baby, the fetus is causing her medical harm, I say we have a long way to go, man. Our country's great when we're united, and we have to figure out a way to unite people.
I agree. We gotta find that path. It's interesting you said it, because I got to tell you, I grew up in America. In an America where not everyone, I don't know that there's any more disagreement now than there was when I was a kid under Bush, under Reagan. I think that that's what makes our country great, right? But I think that there is this issue of like, what can we agree on? What can we agree that we need to do for people? And it's interesting because, one of the things that is, again, this in the battle, it's in, issues that we face that are unique is, keeping a middle class afloat, right? And getting, and growing a middle class and getting away from these disparity, not because we want to take away from people and redistribute, but opportunity. And
I think we all want a fair shot, man.
Yeah.
And that's for a small business owner, because we have to help the small business owner. Maybe not give them tax and like tax dollars, but there's a great tax code. And if people are doing right by the system, by society, then why shouldn't they benefit? Right? Let's reward people for doing the right thing and go after the bad actors. Let's go after the criminals, the true criminals. But let's make sure that our fellow Americans have an opportunity, to do better in life.
Tell, if you would, give some information on how people can find out more information about your campaign and what's coming up next.
Absolutely. So it's Robert Asencio. My website is Asencio, ASENCIO Congress. Asencio's on the board there. So it's Asencio4Congress.com. Give us a shout out. Join the team. We are, over the next 50 some odd days before elections on November 8th, the ballots will start dropping, but that's vote by mail ballots will start dropping late September. We want everyone to know that they have an option.
Are there any debates? Does Carlos?
God, I hope so. Nothing planned yet, but I hope so. Look, the best part of our country is that we have different positions and we can argue them, but let's argue them. Let the people decide, and let's not go against their vote.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much. I was really wish you all the luck in the world. However this turns out, I think that, we always complain about the quality of our candidates. And I know Carlos Jimenez. I like him as a man, as a father, as a like I know him personally. I feel the same way about you. And it's interesting. Like it's an interesting race where we have good people running. And I wish you all the luck. I'm really happy that you're running. I'm really happy that we need more people like you that are running, that just see something that they don't like and then go through it. So I want to thank you for doing that. I think it really is. It's however it turns out, and I hope it turns out positive for you. I think it's great, and we're seeing everyone's seeing the hard work that you're doing and getting this messaging out, and iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, man.
And competition is good. We're talking about capitalism. There's nothing like competition. And let's get these ideas out there and let's talk about these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about solutions. And I think I commend you for doing that. I've never heard you say a bad word about anybody. And I think that is your campaign has maintained that.
Yeah, we're not going to lie. We're not. The standing order on my campaign is no embellishment, just the truth. We had enough of that. People are tired of the BS. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much.